Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 17th of June. It's a damp and misty Northumberland morning. I didn't give a weather report, I'm told, yesterday, so there you are. Today, we're moving on in the Gospel to a point where Jesus is warning us that what we do, what we give, and how we fast has to be about our relationship with God and not about showing off to others. And that's interesting in that today we remember two people who most people will not have heard of. They're called Samuel and Henrietta Barnett, who lived in the 19th century and into the last century, and are commemorated by the Church of England on this day. And I'll say why in a minute. Yesterday I was talking about people of faith challenging people of power and challenging corruption, and etc., etc. The story of Samuel and Henrietta is very different. He was born in 1844, and his wife was born in 1851, born firmly in the Victorian era, and lived mainly in the Victorian era, at least he did. And she came from a richer family than him, but they both came from comfortable circumstances. He was ordained, and he went with her to work in Whitechapel in London. And that at the time, if you think this is the time of Jack the Ripper and all of that, was a very poor, a very run-down society where people lived in abject poverty. And he and his wife, who also worked with the reformer Octavia Hill on housing, saw the terrible need of the people of their parish. And they were instrumental in the development of what was called Christian socialism, putting the principles of Christian faith into a way of living socially to alleviate the needs of the poor. You can see it's all very contemporary still. And they worked there in Whitechapel for very many years, being involved in social projects, the idea of a national pension, in better housing, and in the empowerment and education of people. They started something which was called the university settlements. Toynbee Hall is the famous one, where people who were at university, people who were well off, who were privileged, went to live among the poor to gain some understanding of what life was like and to inform their decisions later on. Clemenceau, who became the French Prime Minister, said that Samuel was one of the three most significant people he ever met in England. They wrote a book called Practicable Socialism. Eventually, he became a canon and later subdean of Westminster, and they moved into Leafy Hampstead. But their work to help the poor didn't stop. They continued to work for the improvement of housing and all of these things until he died in 1913, and she carried on this work until she died in 1936. They were forces in their own right. And we remember them because they believed that the Christian faith that they held to their heart and the spread of the gospel, they weren't shy of evangelism, meant that Christians had to work for better communities, for a better society, for the rights of the poor, that the gospel was about the improvement of people's lives, not only spiritually, but practically. That's a thread that continues to run. And of course it defies this idea that Christians shouldn't be involved in politics. Because if our faith makes a difference to us, it should make a difference to the way in which we live in relation to others. So as we remember them both today, we pray that the Lord will fill our hearts with compassion, with kindness, with love, and help us to live out our Christian faith in practical ways. May God bless us all.